You're listening to the Weekly Dartscast 180!
Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Weekly Dartscast in association with Darts Corner. I'm Alex Moss and joining me as always it is the Darts Driver King, the Darts statistician, Burton DeWitt. How are you doing?
I'm doing just fine. How are you, Alex?
I'm doing all right here, thank you. Just about recovered from the excitement of England's penalty shootout win in the Euros at the weekend. But I'm looking forward to chatting some darts and previewing one of my favourite tournaments of the year. That is the World Matchplay, the 31st edition of the biggest tournament of the summer. It's almost here. Luke Humphries goes in as the pre-tournament favourite to win a fifth singles major in just 9 months. Will he be stopped?
It depends which Luke Humphries turns up. Because other than the World Cup triumph, over the last 2 months, he's not been quite at his very best. Not that he's been poor or anything, but he's not been at that same level that he was at for the final few months of last year when he won those 4 singles majors, when he won the world title to become world number one. And, even if we look, he only played one of the 2 days of the Players' Championships in Milton Keynes last week. But if we look at that day, he did win 3 matches, but they were all tight 6-5, 6-5, 6-4. In 3 of the 4 matches, he was well below the level overall that we expect out of him. We expect a high 90s, low ton average from him, and those were more in the mid 90s. But on the other hand, he did find his best game when he needed it. A 12 darter in the decider to beat Connor Scott. From 0-4 down against Vincent van der Voort, throwing legs of 13, 14, 14, 15, 13, and 16 darts to come back and win that match 6-5. He was lifting his game and doing the right things at the right time, almost as if he was trying to put himself in trouble so that he could be prepared and so that he could get that experience of having to lift his game. I'm not saying that he was doing that, but it almost looked that way because of how he found ways to turn it on after getting himself in trouble. But there were other times where he didn't. In that match where he finally lost in the last 16 against an informed Cameron Menzies, against the one player that day that he really needed to be on his best, he wasn't. He didn't break in that match in the 6 legs. All 11 legs went with the throw. And in the middle 4 of those 6 attempts to break, he was nowhere near. He was left over a ton after 4 visits in all those legs. I mean, yeah, okay, he could have taken out a 104. He could have taken out a 130 if he was given a 5th chance. But that's leaving it all to do. And in none of those did he ever get that chance, because in all of them, Menzies took it out in his 5th visit. That's not what we expect against Luke Humphries. When he's playing at his best, sure, he's not going to break in 12 darts every single time, but he's not going to go 4 consecutive legs against the throw without even having a look, without even leaving himself right there on a double after 4 visits or missing a dart at double after it. And that's where Luke Humphries' game has been too often right now. It's why he lost to Barney in the first round in Leverkusen. It's why he lost to Rob Cross. Yeah, he came back and made it tight, but he lost to Rob Cross in a poor performance in New York in the semifinals, going 5-0 down in that match. And he did not look his best in Poland in the World Series either. There are some questions right now about where Luke Humphries' game is. He's still one of the 2 or 3 best players in the world, but it's not a clear-cut, dominant Luke Humphries like it was last year, and it's going to need to be if he's going to win the World Matchplay. That said, he's been a player who now for 2 years has turned it on at the events that he wants to turn him on at. For a while, that was the Euro Tour when he won those 4 Euro Tours. At the end of last year, it became the majors, and this season has been all about getting ready for the World Matchplay. Part of that was lifting his game for the World Cup, where he won it with England. Part of that was also prioritizing the Premier League, where he made the final. We'll see which Luke Humphries it is. If it's the Luke Humphries that has been the most of the last 2 months, he's not winning the title. If it's the Luke Humphries at the end of last year, he is winning the title. More likely, it's going to be a Luke Humphries somewhere in between. And do I think he'll be stopped? Yes, we'll come on to by who later. But I think he's going to be playing more like that Luke Humphries that is a world champion than the Luke Humphries that has been eminently beatable for the last 2 months.
We shall see. Well, I just want to go back to that stat that we mentioned at the start. Luke Humphries going for his 5th singles major in just 9 months, and that's a rate of success that we've only really ever seen in the PDC from 2 players, Michael van Gerwen and Phil Taylor. And Luke Humphries already on 4 major titles, level with Adrian Lewis. He's a couple more wins behind Raymond van Barneveld. He's halfway to matching the likes of Gary Anderson and Peter Wright on 8, and to have done all that inside a year since he won his first major as well. And I go back to last year's World Matchplay 12 months ago now. Luke Humphries yet to win that first major title, but he was being touted quite often as the next in line, the next player to cross the mark. And he very nearly did it in this tournament last year, getting to the semi-finals, pushing Johnny Clayton in that semi-final, the Ferret winning it 17-15 after trailing for a lot of that game. He was behind after all 4 of the intervals, but come back to win it. But he comes back to the Winter Gardens this year, Luke Humphries, as that top seed, the world number 1, with all that silverware in the trophy cabinet, as the tournament favourite, and for many people, the player to beat. But there is going to be a certain 17-year-old who I'm sure we're going to talk a bit more about throughout this show, Luke Littler, hot on his heels, and you think he'll be one of Luke Humphries' biggest threats on that opposite side of the draw. But that is despite being paired up with the world number 2, Michael van Gerwen, in the first round. Littler still the second favourite behind Humphries to complete another title-winning debut. But for Humphries, I don't want to look too far ahead for this question, because before that potential third major final between the 2 Lukes, they've both got to get through their sides of the draw. And for Humphries, on paper, he's been given a kind of draw in round 1 against Ricardo Pietreczko. These averages via FEBS data on Twitter, the seasonal average for Pikachu so far in 2024, 89.33, which equates to 90th on the tour, and it is by far the lowest of the 32 players in this field. And don't forget, it was Pietreczko who had Humphries in a whole world of trouble at Ali Pali in the third round, 3-1 up in sets, missed a dart at double 18 for a 2-0 lead in that 5th set before Humphries come back, and the rest, as they say, is history. So he's not going to take him lightly, but beyond that first round, there are going to be, you'd think, some more tricky hurdles to overcome. Possible matchups with reigning major champions like Stephen Bunting, Dimitri van den Berg, Gerwyn Price potentially in the semi-finals. That could be another blockbuster encounter. But will he be stopped? He is the man to beat for me. But like you said, I think we have to wait till the end of the show to get our predictions on who we think is going to win this title.
Well, you mentioned one of the people we need to talk about. Actually, you mentioned 2 of the people that are relevant to this next question. Obviously, Luke Littler, but you also mentioned Ricardo Pietreczko. Those are 2 of the 5 debutantes in the field at the Winter Gardens this year. Obviously, Luke Littler going off as the second favorite. But of the other 4, Ricardo Pietreczko, Luke Woodhouse, Gian Van Veen, and Richie Edhouse, who do you see being going the furthest of those 4 in Blackpool?
Yeah, it's a tough question, because aside from Luke Littler, those other 4 debutants, they're all going to go off as the underdogs in their first round games, and they're all facing former major champions. We just spoke about him, Ricardo Pietreczko, the unenviable task of debuting at the Winter Gardens against the world number 1 Luke Humphries. Luke Woodhouse, he's got the defending champion Nathan Aspinall, who he said recently he's been struggling with an injury, but he's not going to want to give up his title without a fight. Richie Edhouse takes on last year's Masters champion Chris Dobie, and then last of all, Gian Van Veen plays the 4-hit wonder Rob Cross. So I don't want to discount any of them, because they all deserve to be in this field. They've all had their moments over the last 12 months where you go, they are one of the best 32 players in the world at least, and they deserve to be in the World Matchplay. But for Ricardo Pietreczko, it was some time ago now, going back 9 months when he won that Euro Tour title, which is a big reason why he's qualified for the match play for the first time. And he played some excellent stuff, not just that weekend, but around that period as well. But 2024, not gone according to plan for him so far. Could he pull off a result in the first round? You'd say it's probably unlikely, but if he did, then that would really open up that section of the draw, and he could maybe go on a run beyond that to maybe the quarterfinals. But I think based on the season so far, Humphries' level is going to have to drop 4 or 5 points. Pietreczko's going to have to raise his game by around the same as well. So I'm looking elsewhere. Richie Edhouse, again, he's had some big scalps on the European Tour this year. It's been good to see, and we talk a lot about young players coming through the ranks, but Richie Edhouse, 41 years old, making his match play debut this year. Been on and off the tour over the years, but it's not been an overnight success for him. But I just wonder whether his form has tapered off a little bit in recent weeks. And looking at running analogies. I know it's not the same as darts, but you talk about athletes wanting to peak for race day, bring their best form to the races, hit their peak at just the right time. Richie, he's had some brilliant results this year to get to Blackpool, but I've not seen too much from him in the lead up to this event to say that he is going to pull off a result like beating Chris Dobey. And the other two, Gian Van Veen playing Rob Cross, again another formidable opponent. We just saw him reach 3 finals in 3 weekends on the World Series not so long ago. Yes, he had a bit of a howler on the Euro Tour the last time we saw him, averaging 85, losing 6-0 to Michael Smith. But I'm expecting Rob Cross to be a contender this year. I think he is due another run at the match play, which leaves me with Luke Woodhouse to spring a surprise against the defending champion on the opening night on Saturday. And since Michael van Gerwen, he went back-to-back in 2015 and 2016, we have had 7 different winners in the last 7 years. No one's defended this title, and I think that streak of players not going back-to-back is going to continue here. I think Luke Woodhouse, someone we've seen make strides all the time, this is going to be another one of them. He's going to get past Aspinall in round 1 and Danny Noppert or James Wade in round 2. I think he'd fancy his chances in that one as well. So out of those 4 debutants, putting Luke Littler aside, I'm going to go with Luke Woodhouse to go the furthest.
I'm going to disagree, but not because I disagree with everything you said, but because I don't think any of them are going to win their first round match. And a lot of that comes down to, I think all of them are playing, well, obviously other than Luke Littler, or even Luke Littler is playing his worst he's played all year. But that's just over 2 days, and that came out of nowhere. But the other 4, I think all have regressed over the last couple months compared to where they were. I do agree that Luke Woodhouse is the most likely to win. He's the one that hasn't regressed as much as the others. But there has been a noticeable decrease in his performances over the last couple months. 6 of his last 8 matches in Players' Championship events are below his seasonal average. He hasn't beaten anyone of note in those 8 matches. He's had losses to, these are good players, but players that you'd expect him to play better against. Averaging 89 against Lucas Venning, averaging 92 this past week, just a few days ago, in fact, and going out in the first round to Owen Roloffs. He's not at that same level that he was a few months ago when he was making a semifinal, when he made a quarterfinal, averaging over a ton in 2 of those matches, averaging over 95 in every single one of the matches en route to the quarterfinal. He's definitely regressed by a few points over the last couple months. And maybe some of that was the pressure of trying to get to the World Matchplay. He was in a very good position, but he wasn't guaranteed. And he still needed that occasional win to really solidify it. And even entering the final day, he wasn't guaranteed. And maybe that was part of the problem. Maybe there was just a little bit of pressure. And now that he's there, he'll play with that freedom that he was when the match play was certainly a target, but was more off in the distance. And that we'll see. But there are some questions about, is he still improving, or is he on a little bit of a dip right now? But the other 3 have definitely regressed over the last few months. Gian Van Veen was a world beater for much of last year, and he continued on playing pretty well at the start of this year, but he's not playing as well over the last few months, noticeably decreased. He's not averaged over a ton in a Players' Championship event in over 2 months, and he had already done it 6 times up until then this year. Richie Woodhouse, we were talking about him as one of the 10 best players in the world on current form about a month ago, but he did not have a good week in Milton Keynes. He has not had a good performance in the last 2 Euro Tours. There has been a significant drop-off from averaging over 100 as often as he wasn't to averaging in the mid-80s as often as he wasn't. There's definitely some questions about where his game is right now. And you talked about Riccardo Pietreczko, real struggles so far this year. I don't think any of them win. I think Luke Woodhouse has the best chance. He is playing the best of them, and he has a potentially favorable draw in Nathan Aspinall, who we just don't know exactly where his game is right now. But I don't think any of them are going to win. I think all 4 are going to lose. So the answer is either all of them or none of them, because they're all going to the same round, the first round. I'm not picking any of them to make it to Tuesday.
We'll continue our look ahead to the World Matchplay in a moment, but let's bring in our first guest on this week's show, and you're going to hear plenty of him during the tournament. Here's our chat with the Sky Sports pundit, and commentator Dan Dawson.
I'm joined today by Sky Sports and ITV Darts pundit and commentator, as well as commentator on some other sports now, but more importantly, the reigning Weekly Dartscast Commentator of the Year, Dan Dawson. Dan, thanks for the time. How are you doing?
I'm all right. I'd forgotten I'd won that. Evidently, that's dramatically changed my life, but a privilege is always to be introduced as such.
I wouldn't expect anything other than a massive change in your life from that award. And in fact, let's start by touching on it. Our listeners voting you as the commentator of the year. In fact, you said the award would change your life, but you would still be kicking bins and shouting in public parks. So what have the last 6 months been like for you since winning our prestigious award?
Yeah, much the same, Burton. To be honest, nothing has changed. I still lead a vagabond lifestyle around the West Midlands. I don't live in a palace. I have not suddenly found myself swimming in money or fame or anything else. So I'm pretty much where I was before I won the award. But there's no trophy or anything, is there? I didn't get anything in the post, so it's just sort of like a theoretical sort of thing, right? Or is there some sort of bauble somewhere with my name on it?
I'll give you a firm handshake if I see you in Blackpool on
right.
Monday.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's fine. That's fine. All right. Deal.
Well, let's get on to the serious stuff then. We're talking at the start of the week with the World Matchplay just 5 days away. There's not many venues or tournaments that you haven't been to now. Where does the Winter Gardens and this tournament sit for you on your list?
Yeah, it's really good, isn't it? I mean, from a basic logistical point of view, I don't have to get on a plane. It's mainly just evening sessions, so it feels like, the World Championship's great and everything, and obviously Euro tours and those weekend tournaments that we have, like, whether it be the European Championship or whatever, I absolutely adore them. But this just feels like concentrated excellence for evening sessions pretty much all the way through the week. I know we've got a couple of doubles and we've got the Women's World Matchplay as well, but it just feels like every single game, every single dart, there's so much riding on it. It's a brilliant venue. It's an amazing tournament. The theory is you've got the best 16 in the world and the best 16 informed players. You're always guaranteed. I can't think of a year at the Matchplay where we haven't had absolute bangers of games. And look, I just think we are, as I've hammered over and over again, we're living in a world now in professional darts where you genuinely don't know who's going to win. And for me, as a darts anorak, that makes it exciting. Somebody is going to fulfill their dreams in Blackpool over those 9 days, and we're all going to get to watch.
And we'll see who that is, but we're going to look back now a little earlier, since the last time we had you on the show, believe it or not, was late 2022. A long time. We've seen during that time that you've become established as part of Sky's darts coverage as a commentator and a pundit. What does that mean to you as someone that's been involved in darts for a long time now, working your way up the ladder?
Yeah, it does. It's satisfying. It's exciting. When I was doing it on the radio and doing Euro tours and things like that, the streaming coverage when I was starting out, that was obviously the top level, the thing you want to aim for. And I didn't know if I'd ever get there, but it was something to aim for. And look, I've been very, very fortunate in my entire darts career. I've just been in the right place at the right time, and things, opportunities have presented themselves. But, it's a privilege to work with the likes of Wayne and Rod and Emma Payton and all the guys behind the scenes who do all the production stuff. Being part of these enormous productions for the biggest and most important tournaments in the sport. And ultimately, it just means I get to have one of the best seats in the house for it. And so, yeah, I'm very, very lucky, and I'm very, very appreciative for the opportunity to be at these events. I mean, I've been at many of them for many years prior to when I worked for Sky, whether I was doing radio coverage or doing silly social media stuff for the PDC or whatever. But the fact that I'm there and getting to be a part of it, however small, is an enormous privilege. And yeah, it's great. And I'm really looking forward to Blackpool this summer.
It's well deserved, but one tournament you weren't at, though, was the 2023 UK Open, an event which saw Andrew Gilding fulfil his destiny and become a major champion. You were working elsewhere that weekend. How did you follow it, and have you got over not being in Minehead to seeing it happen in person?
Yeah, I know, but what if I'd been there, the whole chaos theory thing, maybe he wouldn't have won? Like, the butterfly flapping its wings in the Amazon sets off a tidal wave in Japan or whatever. Like, maybe just me being there. Because the truth be told, Andrew Gilding has only ever won one major tournament, and it's one of the very few that I was not at. Yes, I was in America at the time, commentating on World Chase Tag. And so I spent an evening trying to explain to some very confused parkour athletes who this bloke Andrew Gilding was and why it was such a big deal. And I'm not really sure my powers of explanation did it justice, because they just seemed confused. But it was magical, and that is what sport is all about, not just darts. That's what sport is all about. This is a guy who, has tried and tried and tried, went away from the game. We didn't think we'd ever see him back on the elite level tour. And he came back and he said, because I interviewed him at Q School when he got his card back, and he said, I know how good I can be. I remember that run to the semi-finals of the UK Open where it was only an unbelievable Van Gerwen who beat me. I don't see why I can't do that again. And ultimately, he did even better than that. And it's brilliant. And I was delighted for Andrew. And I think that, what else delighted me was the genuine, and I know there's sort of like, amongst darts fandom, there is a heavy dose of irony, I think, with how people completely support certain players. You look at what's going on with Stephen Bunting now. He just does mad TikToks and he's more popular than he's ever been, and one of the most popular players in the world. But there was an outpouring of congratulations, of genuine warmth, I think, for Andrew Gilding, and it was fully deserved, and it was a delight. So yes, I wish I'd been there, but I'd much rather take Andrew going and winning that without me being there than me just seeing him say get to the final, which would have been a huge achievement in the first place anyway.
Well, you mentioned the magic. Since then, we've seen more magic as the darting landscape has changed with the emergence of a teenager by the name of Luke Littler. You've called some of his big moments over the last 9 months. As a fan and as someone involved in the game, what have you made of the Luke Littler story so far?
He's a freak. He is an absolute freak. It is freakish what he is doing and continues to do. And it's amazing to watch. He is such a level-headed, grounded young man. He just takes everything in his stride. I do quite like that it is dawning on him how big a deal he is. He is aware of it. I've interviewed him a couple of times, and in recent weeks, he's gone from the World Championship, where he's just like, I'm just a normal lad who likes playing darts. Now, with all the attention, the guy's doing photo shoots, he's doing fashion shoots, he's hanging around with, multi-millionaire sports people because they want to be associated with him. And he now knows that he is a big deal. He says, look, I know what I've done for the sport, which is a hell of a thing. There's sort of almost a touch of arrogance to it. But the thing is, it's true. And you can't really question anything about him, I don't think. I think he's been absolutely sensational. He's brought new fans to the sport, new eyes on the sport, and the story itself is absolutely amazing. I've said it a few times. Like we had Fallon winning games at the World Championship. There was a great story, and a first woman to win games at the World Championship. We've now had an actual child nearly go and win the World Championship. And look, if he does go and win it at his second attempt later on this year, then that's nowhere near as big a story. It's huge, obviously, but he'd kind of not come out of nowhere, but he turned up very, very quickly and nearly won the whole thing on his debut. So I don't know how we top it. It's going to have to be Talking Dog wins World Championship to get any bigger than that. But yeah, it's sensational, and he's an absolute credit to the sport and to himself. I'm impressed with how he's handled everything, and it is a lot that he is having to deal with, much more than I think any other dart player that's gone before. Maybe you can make comparisons to Bristow right back in the day, but like when Eric was around, there wasn't the bombardment of social media. There just wasn't as much media and demands on his time. So look, I think this is a unique situation. It's astonishing how well he's dealing with it, and it's going to be fascinating watching him at Blackpool for the first time, because look, it's not been an entirely smooth ride. It's been very, very smooth, But there are still some vulnerabilities there, and the problem is when they do manifest themselves, on very rare occasions, then everybody's going to jump on it, and it's going to be how he deals with it. So, look, I just think it's a sensational story, and it's great to watch it develop.
And another Luke who's had an impressive 12 months, Luke Humphries, lifting major titles, becoming the new world number one, someone you've followed closely on the Pro Tour over the years. How impressed have you been with Luke, not just on his run to get to world number one, but since then making more major finals, lifting more silverware at the World Cup a few weeks ago as well?
Yeah, I think he's absolutely amazing. Look, I'd say that about most of the players, to be honest. I'm just one of the reasons I love the game. I love the game because I think that the people who play it, they are normal people doing extraordinary things, and he's been doing more extraordinary things than most. And the stuff that he was doing at the back end of last year was unbelievable. He just turned into this winning machine, much like he'd been on the European tour as a prelude to that. And I don't think it's a coincidence that he'd learnt how to do it on the Euro tour, particularly, playing multiple games in a day, and he just seems to be able to do that more regularly and be at somewhere near his best more regularly than pretty much anybody else. I also think he is a phenomenal world champion and world number one, just in his understanding of the role, in his responsibilities. I know that it hasn't been unbridled domination from the start of this year like it was towards the back end of last year, but you look at the number of finals he's been in, and he had a Euro Tour win, which was spectacular, and a World Cup win, but there's a whole bunch of other tournaments where he's gone on to make the final and often lost narrowly. And I think that it could have been, we could be sat here talking about Luke Humphries being head and shoulders above everybody else, even Luke Littler. He could have eclipsed the number of titles that Luke Littler has won, but he hasn't. But he's right up there. He's the two Lukes at the top of the game right now, and it's. I think there's going to be loads of games between them that are going to be absolutely brilliant.
So as part of the Sky team, you were there for many of those Premier League nights as well, those two Lukes serving up a thrilling finale. But there's always been talk about the format, which I think got especially loud this year. Has it run its course, or do you see the nightly tournament format continuing for a little longer?
It don't bother you, Burton, does it? Because you don't watch it, neither of you lads. You're not that fussed. But yeah, look, I realise that. It must be dead exciting, that. Look, I understand. I actually quite like the nightly little tournament. I like that format. I think it's good. I think it's something where it does matter. People hark back to, I remember the league format. That was great, wasn't it? You had loads of games which you just thought, this is meaningless. This is pointless. I've played out a draw for two guys at 6th and 7th. This is doing absolutely nothing. We're looking back on that in rose-tinted spectacles. However, there are lots of suggestions that I think are worth investigating. I like the idea of having more players involved. I think that the strength in the game is now in its depth, rather than needing to have a certain one or two players in every night to get people through the doors, although maybe that has changed with Luke Littler's arrival. That might have blown that out of the water. But I do think that the strength in depth is better than ever at the top end of darts, and so you could have more players involved, whether you did that by giving some players a week off. Would it be a big deal if you went to the Premier League for a night and Michael van Gerwen wasn't there that night? He was only there for half the night. It reduces some of the workload for the top players, and means that they're more likely to play in more of those ranking events, be they Euro tours or whatever. I think there's merit to investigating that. Little Richard Ashdown, he suggested having a league format, so the old style where you have, draws are possible, all that sort of stuff for the first half of the league. Eliminate two, because as he puts it, there are some players who just they start badly, they have a poor Premier League, they just want out of it. They've got nothing to play for. Yes, they could, get a couple of places up the league and win themselves an extra 10 grand or whatever over the next 8 weeks or whatever, but it's just a way out for those guys. And then you've got 8, and then you go to the nightly tournament format for the second half of it. That might freshen it up. The PDC make those decisions. I have no input into them, so we'll see what they come up with. But I certainly think there's merit in looking at different formats.
And I think the PDC have shown a willingness to change things around over the years as well, because they recognise that they need to keep it fresh. And look, the Premier League's going nowhere. It is hugely important to professional darts in terms of, you know, TV coverage, getting bums on seats. You know, they get thousands and thousands and thousands all over Europe now through the door to watch the Premier League. It is a huge thing for the sport, and it generates money that then supports the other ranking events. So look, I've realised that some people think, all right, it's not for them. Fine, there's loads of other stuff that is, and that is supported by the Premier League, and I think that it probably will get jigged around somehow, whether it's next year or the year after, because the PDC have got a track record of doing that, and I think that's good. And you may notice, dear listener, that the sound quality has changed drastically, because we've had loads of technical problems in the last few minutes of this phone call, so we're now doing it a different way, just in case you're wondering.
Good man. Well, we'll finish up with some listener questions in a moment. Burton's gone off for a sit down, but we'll circle back to the World Matchplay. And last year, you incorrectly tipped a Gary Anderson masterclass in the Sky Studio before his game with the handicapper's nightmare.
I was wondering when you'd bring that
up. Well, Gary, he's averaging more than anyone so far in 2024. So, are you backing him again at Blackpool this year?
I mean, once bitten, twice shy. I mean, there's no doubt he's been absolutely brilliant this year. In fact, he's been brilliant for the last 18 months or so. And I think it's been brilliant to watch the resurgence of one of the all-time greats who, to be honest, didn't look that interested for periods prior to this renaissance that he's had. But you can't argue with the quality of darts he's been playing. It's a disgusting section of the draw he's in. I mean, he could have to play, well, he will have to play Michael Smith and beat him. Then it could be Chris Dobie. Then it could be, I don't know, Cross or Heta or somebody like that. He's going to have to produce some masterclasses to go on a run, certainly if he's going to, you know, win this another time. And I don't know if that's likely to happen. Certainly there have been some disappointments from Gary in the big TV events, which is kind of the inverse of what he always used to do. He always used to be brilliant in the big events, and maybe, you know, couldn't be bothered to play the Euro Tour, didn't want to do it. But now it's the Pro Tour stuff, and he's even putting up on the Euro Tour and won a Euro Tour. That's where he's doing his business. And look, I'm very interested to see that game. It's undoubtedly one of the ties of the first round, Anderson versus Michael Smith. But I'm going to refrain from predicting any masterclasses from anyone because I know what happens.
Fair enough. Well, we have got some listener questions. We'll try and get through some of these as quickly as we can. The first one comes from FDI, who says, how does Dan see darts coverage changing in the next few years, both online and on TV?
Oh, that's a big question, isn't it? I think there's more scope. I've always thought this, that you have to tell the stories of the players involved, and I've realised that's difficult sometimes, particularly on those sort of weekend events on ITV, because you are so pressed for time. It's proper rack 'em, stack 'em darts, get a game on, get the game on, get the game on, because there's so much to get through. But I think we do have to tell the stories of the players involved so people actually get to know them and they care about them. And I think one of the great examples of that is Stephen Bunting over the last couple of years. You go back and look how long Bunting has been using that Let's Go Bunting mental hashtag, because I bet you for the first few years of him doing it, nobody paid any attention to it whatsoever, and now it is everywhere. And it's all because people have engaged with him as a character. It may have come through an unlikely source of him doing silly TikTok videos and whatever, but I think that genuinely drives people's interest. They want to know more about the people who are competing. And that's on the broadcasters and that's on the PDC to tell those stories and find ways of doing it. And look, the PDC over the last few years has done some excellent social media stuff, or YouTube or whatever, to try and bring these characters to life so people do care about them and do understand them a bit more. And, some people really like player A and not like player B, and vice versa for other people. That's fine. That's what sport's about. You want, people to cheer for and people that you're not that fussed about. But there's all sorts in professional darts, and I think it's down to us, the broadcasters, to bring those characters out and give people reasons to cheer them on.
The next one comes from Matt Langan, who says, we've seen an export of the darts with Littler showing up at football clubs and at the F1 paddock this weekend. From his media perspective, is Dan seeing the inverse of this? Other sports/celebs wanting more engagement with the PDC in their big events?
I think there's an element of that. I mean, ultimately, he's given examples there where they've, Luke Littler, I doubt Luke Littler has rocked up to the F1 paddock and gone, can I have a look around? He's probably been invited. They probably want to be associated with him. He's advertising things all over the place. He's doing fashion photo shoots. People want a piece of this lad because he's big news and he's a big story. And so I think it is already happening. And look, Matt, he's based over in the States, isn't he? He has seen with his own eyes how things are progressing over there. I thought that the New York event, record crowds there. WWE were getting involved. We had WWE wrestlers. I had no idea who they were, but they were doing stuff, and I realised that's a commercial collaboration between WWE and the PDC. But there's still, that wouldn't have happened a few years ago, and so I think that is progress, and darts is getting more recognition. I think globally, from punters, from different countries and from other sports, and that can only be a good thing if it increases the standing of the sport around the world.
Definitely. Well, here's one back to you, and it's CJ O'Kane1, who says, who's your favourite person to be on commentary with?
There's loads, and they're all different ones, really. I mean, look, working with Wayne is an absolute joy. I think he makes everybody he works with better. He brings in energy and, as well, a huge amount of knowledge and insight. He's absolutely superb to work with. But I've got long-standing people. Nico and Chris Murphy. I love sharing a box with them. I haven't commentated with Chris for a long while, actually, but I always enjoy it when I do. John Part is utterly mad. You don't know what he's going to say, but he is going to bring a unique viewpoint to the game, and I think that's always interesting to be sat alongside somebody who is bringing a different perspective to the match. We're watching the same thing, but he's interpreting things in a different manner, and he's doing so from a position of being a 3-time world champion. Everybody, whoever you sat with in the comms box, they're going to bring something different to it, and it's about appreciating that and trying to work with it. And I think we are blessed to have a lot of very good commentators and very good pundits in the sport. I can't say. I probably could highlight a couple I don't want to work with, but I'm not going to.
We'll save that for the Patreon anyway. Zach Broxson, next one, says, favourite European tour city/venue?
I mean, I think that there's a couple that we don't go to that I'd love us to go back to Göttingen, because the venue was great. That was in Germany, and the city was really nice, and more of a town, really. It did host the European Championship one year, I think, and I think that's a fabulous venue. There are so many ones. The Belgian ones have been brilliant. They've always been in visa so far. We've got an Antwerp one coming up. I'm interested to see what that'll be like. But there's not many where I'd say, this isn't very good. They're all excellent venues that we go to. I'm just trying to think if there's one that really stands out. I wait to see what this Swiss one is like. I've got no idea what the crowd's going to be like. I always thought that Denmark, the crowds are amazing. The World Series, we go there every year, and the crowds are absolutely sensational. We don't do a Euro tour there at the minute. I would love us to go back to Denmark, because there always seems to be the support. The only thing that the Danes are lacking are some players to really challenge, and hopefully we're going to see the development of a couple of those over the coming years.
Next one comes from Connor Ellis, who says, when did Dan become an Andrew Gilding superfan?
As soon as I saw him, like everybody else. Love at first sight. But the real thing that solidified it was that UK Open semi-final run, where, quite frankly, he was astonishing. It's exactly what sport's about. It was a guy who had not really, threatened. No, tell a lie. He'd made some Pro Tour finals. He'd lost them all. He still hasn't won a Pro Tour final. The only thing he's won is a UK Open, madly. But that guy showed that if you're talented enough to be on the tour, and you have to be really good to be on the tour, and if you're talented enough to stay on the tour, then if things come together for you and you play your top stuff over the course of a weekend, then magical things can happen. And of course, it didn't happen for him that weekend, because he lost to Van Gerwen in the semis with 108 average. But it did happen for him a few years later after he dropped off the tour entirely. So yeah, as soon as I saw him, but that weekend was where it basically I got the Gilding tattoo on my chest.
And we've spoken a lot about the darts, but we should talk about another of your loves. This last question coming from Elliot, who says, who is the GOAT of chase tag?
The GOAT of chase tag, well, there are so many, but one of the top boys is a guy called Carl Soderman, who is a genuine Hollywood stuntman who plays chase tag. He competes for Hollywood free runners, and they have just become world champions in France, which is why I missed the Eurotour in Graz, because I was there commentating on it. But if you haven't watched World Chase Tag, you should do, because it's wicked, and it's a completely... It has no similarities to darts whatsoever, but it's still dead good, so go and watch it. It's on YouTube.
Well, a belated congratulations to Carl and the rest of the team. Dan, it's great to get you on the show as always, and all the best at the World Matchplay and what else is to come this year for you commentating as well.
Yeah, good to speak to you, Lau, and tell Burton that I'm absolutely disgusted that he left halfway through the interview. I think it's rude, I think it's insolent, and I don't care if he's been on some fancy trip to Peru, then he should be better than that sort of behaviour.
Thanks again to Dan for joining us. Now moving on to our question of the week, sponsored by Condor Darts. The draw's out, the schedule of players out for the first round, so if you could attend one first round session at this year's World Matchplay, which one are you picking?
Yeah, and we were talking, I think it was off air last week. I don't think this made it into the show, but we were talking about how historically the Sunday afternoon session is the worst session. I refer to it as the Andy Hamilton, Justin Pipe, Brendan Dolan session, because those were the three players that you could pretty much guarantee were going to be on it every year a decade ago. But because of the European Championships, this year the Sunday afternoon session is not a bad session. And it seems like a lot of those Sunday afternoon players were moved to Sunday evening this time around. Some of the matches that we thought were clear Sunday afternoon matches are on the Sunday evening because I guess they expect nobody is going to be watching opposite the European Championships, although the schedule could change. But I'm not picking the Sunday sessions. I would have to pick either Saturday evening or Monday evening. I think those are the two best. I mean, Saturday, Gurren Price against Daryl Gurney, that's going to be an interesting match if Gezi is healthy. Johnny Clayton against Raymond van Barneveld, one of the matches I picked out last week as a match to watch. I think both of those players will have the potential to go far in this tournament. Do not sleep on Barney. He's playing as well as he's played in a decade, and Johnny Clayton seems to be getting his game back. He only won a title last week. But even more than Saturday night, I want to see the Monday night matches. Damon Hedda, Ryan Searle. Hedda has been a little inconsistent of late, but he's shown up on television, knocking Luke Littler out in one of the matches of the decade at the UK Open earlier this year. He's played his best on television, even if he's been struggling or been inconsistent on the Eurotour and on the floor. Michael Smith, Gary Anderson, I don't need to talk about that. Michael Smith just won the World Cup. Gary Anderson's been the best player so far this year in Players' Championship events, 3 points higher than anyone else in averages. MVG Luke Littler, I think that could be a decent match. I don't know much about those two players, but, they're both all right. And then finally, Chris Dobie, Richie Edhouse. If Richie Edhouse gets back to where he was a month ago, boy, that's a match. It's the least hefty of the four because he's not there right now, but if he gets there, this could be one of the best sessions ever if Richie Edhouse shows up. Monday night's the one I want to go to.
Yeah, it's a good shout. And judging on our poll at the moment as well on Twitter, you can go and have your say until the tournament starts. Looking pretty one-sided in that favour as well. 66% are going with that Monday night, 12% going with Saturday night, 12% going with Sunday afternoon, and just the 10% going with Sunday evening. And I guess the 10% who went with that Sunday evening, they're not worried about watching football come home in the Euros, although the PDC have said that if England make the final of the Euros, then the time of that session on Sunday night is going to be amended. I'm not sure what the plan would be. I think the football kicks off at 8 o'clock UK time. So, yeah, you'd imagine a large percentage of the crowd in for that session would want to watch England in that final, at least until France or Spain score their third goal and go 3-0 up after half an hour. But, yeah, I'm with you. I'm going to go with that Monday night session here. And long-time listeners of the show will know I've been a big advocate, or if you can get to the match play, to go to this session, and that's regardless of the lineup, which I'll be honest, it's not been as tasty as this year's one. But back when I would go with a few of my mates, we'd make the journey up from East Anglia for a long weekend. We'd watch the darts on the Monday night. You'd have the after party in a place called Home HQ. I think it's called something else now, but nowadays I live about an hour from Blackpool. So when I saw the PDC put a tweet out last Wednesday, I think it was, saying that some tickets have been put on resale for the match play, I managed to get one of the tickets for the Monday night session, and this is before the draw's been made. So fast forward a couple of days, we've got the draw, we've got the schedule, and I've arguably got the hottest ticket of the first round here. You mentioned the games that we've got. You've got Van Gerwen, Littler, Smith Anderson, the double main event sandwiched with Damon Heta, Ryan Searle, which could go all the way, and Chris Dobey, Richie Edhouse. And if anyone wants to try and spot me in the crowd at the Winter Gardens on Monday night, I will be wearing a Richie Edhouse replica shirt with a mission sleeve on one arm, and I'm even going to try and grow a goatee beard for it like Richie's got as well. But I think I might have to ask the barbers to sort that, because I don't really trust myself to shave it properly. It might be on the wonk. But back to the darts though, yeah, my vote is going to go with that Monday night session. Can't wait to be there in person and see it live. And if I was offered a ticket to one of the other 3 sessions, I think I'd go with the Sunday afternoon. Ross Smith, Josh Rock, a banging game to kick off the session, one of the ties of the round. Danny Noppert v James Wade, a 19th consecutive match play for Wade. Always good to see him on that stage. Dimitri Vandenberg, Martin Schindler, that's got the makings of another game that could go into extra time. And signing off with Bunting v Joyce, not a standout tie, but we did just see Ryan Joyce throw a 111 average on the floor last week. So if he can bring something like that to the stage, which we know it's easier said than done, but if he can, then the Masters champion, he's going to have his hands full in that one too.
Very much so. Now, it's not just the World Matchplay going on in Blackpool over the next week and a half. It's also the third staging of the Women's World Matchplay, which takes place a week on Sunday. Bo Greaves is the favorite to retain her title. Does she become the first 2-time champion?
Well, the odds would strongly suggest that the answer is yes to this question. Bo Greaves, she's going to go off as the defending champion and almost a 1-2 favourite to retain her title. And has she been as dominant, though, in the lead up to this year's Women's World Matchplay as last year's when she made her debut? The answer to that is no, because going into her debut last year, Bo had won 15 of the 20 Women's Series events that formed the qualification period for that. This time round, she's still the number 1 seed by a fair distance, still topping the averages, but she's won just 8 of the 24 events, losing in 6 other finals. And we have seen in the last 12 months other players take some of that spotlight. We've seen it at the back end of last year, Fallon Sherrock winning 4 titles on the spin, adding another 2 in the first weekend on the Women's Series this year. Noeline van Leuven, she's got off the mark 2 titles, and she's won on the Challenge Tour as well. Lisa Ashton, she's shown some good form as well, winning the last 2 titles before the cut-off. And Bakuru Suzuki, she's picked up a pair of titles this year too. So the 4 players directly below Bo in the seedings, they've all had their moments this year. And the other 3 in the field for this year's Women's Match Play, Rhiannon O'Sullivan, she's not won a Women's Series this year, but she has had some success in the Modus Super Series, winning the Women's Week over there, which did include a lot of these players in the field. And the other 2 players, Anastasia Dobromoslova, Katie Sheldon, the 2 outsiders in the field. But we talk about the growing strength in depth in the ladies' game, and some of the players that haven't qualified for this event, those 2 have, and they've done it the hard way. And to get into that top 8, given the calibre of players we see now on the Women's Series, that takes some doing. So they both deserve to be there. But if Bo is going to be stopped, I think he's going to be in the final. I know a lot of darts fans, they'd love to see a Greaves-Sherrock final. So far in the 2 Women's World Match Plays, we didn't have Bo in the field in the first one, but we did last year. We've not seen a battle of those 2 in this tournament, and I guess it would be kind of a fitting finale, really. You've got the 2 winners so far going up against each other in the final. The winner would become the first 2-time champion of this event. So, yeah, hopefully we'll see that. I think that would be a great final. I think Bo, she does get through her half of the draw for Fallon Sherrock. I think if she gets past Anastasia Dobromoslova, which on current form you'd expect, then it is going to be a very tough semi-final with Lisa Ashton or Rhiannon O'Sullivan. Lisa beat her in Blackpool last year. Rhiannon beat her recently in the Modus as well. So it's going to be a big game, whoever it is. But I think Fallon gets through and over a race to 6 legs in the final. I think she's got the best shot at dethroning the champion. You know what? I'm going to go for a somewhat of an upset. I don't think it's a big upset, but I'm going to go with the underdog on this occasion. I'm going to go with Fallon Sherrock to beat Bo Greaves in a last leg decider, 6-5, last start in hand, double 18, and she becomes that first 2-time Women's World Matchplay champion.
Well, if that does happen, it's a very good shout for tip of the year, but it's not going to happen. I'm not saying that you're going to be wrong that Fallon wins it, but you're going to be wrong that Bo Greaves is even in the final, because I think she loses in the semifinal. And you touched on the 4 players right below her in the rankings: Fallon Sherrock, Lisa Ashton, Mikuru Suzuki, and Noah Lynn van Leuven. And there's no guarantee that even if Bo Greaves makes the final, that she'll play Fallon Sherrock or that she'll play Lisa Ashton, because there's no guarantee that either one of those would make the final. But there is a guarantee that she will play either Mikuru Suzuki or Noah Lynn van Leuven in the second round. And I think whichever one gets through that is going to beat her. We've talked quite a bit about Noah Lynn this year, obviously winning on the Challenge Tour, winning on the Women's Series, continuously having really good performances and deep runs this year, even if she didn't necessarily have her best weekend, the most recent weekend. In fact, it was probably her worst across the 3 events she played, only topping 80 once, and that coming in the final match that she played. But I'm not really that worried about the regression in her performance, because she didn't really have to play much better most of the time. And she ended up losing 2 matches in last leg deciders to players that, yes, she should have played better against and possibly could have won those matches, but against players that you expect that she could lose to in Ryan O'Sullivan and Aline de Graaf. And then she played her best match in her last match against Bo Greaves. But in the WDF events that she's played in the Women's Series earlier this year, this Challenge Tour, she's been playing really good, and she's still, I think, we can look past one bad weekend. As far as Mikuru Suzuki goes, she is playing better than she had been most of the year. So far this year, she's 6th in averages. I should have said that Noah van Leuven is 3rd. But the most recent weekend for Mikuru Suzuki, 11 of her 15 matches, she was above her seasonal average, including getting Bo Greaves to a last leg decider in the final at the first event over the weekend. And in 8 of the 15, she's been over 80. That's 3.5 points above her season average in more than half of her matches, not to mention one match where she was a mile above the ton. Mikuru Suzuki is not playing at a 76.54 average right now. She's playing at an 80-something average, which is top 3, top 4 on the tour. She's playing closer to Bo Greaves than her stats show, and Bo Greaves has been more inconsistent. I think she beats Noah Lynn van Leuven, and then I think she also beats Bo Greaves in the semifinals. I think Mikuru Suzuki is peaking at the right time, and I'm going with Mikuru to pull the upset. And you know what? To be different, I'm going Mikuru to win the title as well. I'll also agree, last leg decider, 6-5, double 18, but it isn't Fallon Sherrock who's slotting the dart into double 18. It is the twice world champion from Japan, Mikuru Suzuki.
There we go. Those are our predictions for the Women's World Matchplay. We're going to be back in a moment to make some predictions for the World Matchplay. But before we do, let's get to our final guest on this week's show. He is the boss of Darting Promotions. Here's our chat with Mark Pritchard.
I'm joined today by the boss of Darting Promotions, Mark Pritchard. Mark, how are you?
Yeah, good. Thank you, lads. You both well?
Yep, I'm doing just fine, and thanks again for the time. And let's start off with the big news from earlier today when we're talking. The draw for the World Matchplay is now out. For your 2 players, Michael Smith takes on Gary Anderson, while Luke Woodhouse on debut goes up against the defending champion in Blackpool, Nathan Aspinall. What was your reaction to the draw, and if you've spoken to them, what do Michael and Luke make of it as well?
Yeah, I've chatted to both lads. I think, look, at the end of the day, the match play is the match play. There was never going to be any easy draw out there. The top 16 in the world, when you look at it at the moment, they're all so good. And the 16 on the other side of the draw is probably the best 16 I've seen on that side of the draw for a long, long time. There was... You can go through the draw and you can sort of maybe pick out 1 or 2 ties which you think, okay, I'd prefer that. But look, it's just the way it is. And when you look at some of the other times that have come out, MVG, Luke Littler, and some of the others that have come out, you just, you take it. The lads are playing really well. So, they'll both go there with full of confidence.
Well, we'll come back to the match play later, but as we said off air, lots to catch up with you on since we last had you on the show as a guest back in December 2022. We were reflecting on Michael Smith's first major title at the Grand Slam. Then he goes and wins the World Championship. Take us back to those 2 weeks at Ali Pali, being there to see Michael achieve his dream of becoming a world champion.
Yeah, it was unreal, to be honest. The year that he'd had running up to that already was already a massive year. Yes, he'd reached a few finals and lost them, but the Grand Slam was a big turning point. And I just thought going into the World Championships, I did really fancy him to have a really strong run there. His head was in the right place. He was playing so well, and the way he handled himself through the whole championships was brilliant, to be honest. There was a couple of games where the old Michael Smith would have probably just lost his head a little bit, and there'd have been games where he'd have just folded and just walked off stage with a loss. But he managed to scrap his way through a couple of games, and then obviously the qualities showed towards the end of the tournament, and he deserved to win it. He was he was the best player over 2 weeks, and the moment was brilliant just to see him and his family and things like that. It just makes what you do for the players worth every minute.
Yeah, and you said at the time when he won the world title that you were the luckiest man on the planet. Obviously, we want to talk about your players, but I do want to give a second to talk about you. How did it feel for you personally to see one of the players you managed, and had managed for a few years, win that biggest tournament in darts at Ali Pali?
Yeah, look, it means a lot. Whenever one of your players goes on to achieve something, whether it's winning a title, whether it's sort of winning pro tours, European tours, whatever event it is, even down to the development of the lads. If I see one of my developments of the lads reach the later stages of a tour event, which is so difficult to do now, it's self-fulfilling. You get a buzz from it because your players are getting a buzz from it, and it just makes everything worthwhile, really.
And we know winning the World Championship, it brings a lot more responsibilities. There's a ton more media requests. There's a lot more demands on the player. What was that side of it like as a manager, trying to juggle everything that came Michael's way off the back of becoming a world champion?
Yeah, it was an experience, mate, to be fair. The first probably 6 months after the Worlds was just like a complete whirlwind, really. I actually sat down with one or two of the other managers who've been in the same position as what I was back then, and they were absolutely brilliant. The advice that they gave me, and the help that they offered and things like that was huge, really, because it just sort of turns into, like I say, an absolute whirlwind. But you've still got to keep yourself planted, your feet planted on the floor, because at the end of the day, we've still got plenty of other players as well to make sure everything was good with all them as well. So it was an experience, and it was an experience which I think if we were lucky enough to have it again, those things that I'd probably do slightly different. But to be able to do it and to be able to experience it was absolutely brilliant, to be fair.
Now, when we last spoke, you mentioned that there have been some health problems which stopped you from traveling for the World Series in 2022. Were you able to get out more last year or so far this year with Michael and experience the global side of the tour?
Yes. So that was just a blood clot issue, really. But we got it all treated and all sorted, and So last year was the first time I went to like the World Series events with him, and we've done the ones this year so far as well, and we're due back out in Australia and New Zealand in a few weeks' time. So yeah, I mean all that's good now. So I've managed to sort of, like you say, experience the World Series, which is a hell of a thing to do, to be honest. They're a long, it's a long way to go to play darts, sort of thing, but it's a great experience to be able to get to those places.
Good times. Well, sticking with Michael, it was another memorable weekend for him at the weekend in Frankfurt, winning the World Cup alongside Luke Humphries, and we saw one of the clips that the PDC put out, you embracing with Luke. I think it was after the semi-finals. We could see that Michael and Luke, they got on very well. What was it like backstage following the team to the title, which we could see as well meant a lot to both of them?
Yeah, it was brilliant. There was a lot of pressure going into it. It was an event which Mike had, always said to me, it meant a lot to him, and it was something that he really wanted to win. To represent your country at any event is a huge thing. So I know the lads were really up for, going to Germany and getting the job done. Obviously, there's not many, you don't get the chance at all apart from that event to play doubles. So you do have to rely on both lads, clicking while the event's on. The first game was just a game where I think they just, got their heads round it and went on from there. But, to be there after every game that they won, and then they'd come backstage and you could see they were both just, kept their feet on the floor, but the confidence was just getting more and more and more. And, I thought they were both superb, to be honest. And when it come the final, I struggle to remember a game of darts that I've actually seen where, I thought Michael scored really, really well in the final. Yes, he missed doubles, but the cleaning up job that Luke was doing on some of those finishing was probably some of the best finishing I've ever seen in a game of darts, to be honest. But yeah, it was fantastic. I was so pleased for them both. It was brilliant.
Well, it's not even been a week now since the World Cup, but people have already started to talk about next year's because of the caliber of the English players at the top of the game. Michael, obviously defending the Grand Slam money and the World Championship money from 2 years ago, has a fight on his hands to make sure he's there to defend the title next year. Do you think having won the title now this past weekend, that's an extra incentive for him now to push on to make sure that he keeps in the top two of the England team for next year?
Yeah, I think so. I think, like I mentioned before, it's a dream to represent your country at any sport, at any level. So, I know for a fact that he'd love to be back there next year and teaming up with Luke to go again and defend the title. But as you say, he's got work to do in the meantime. He's now sort of back to playing some really good stuff. So, fingers crossed now we can kick on from here. We can go to the match play full of confidence and, approach the end of the year full of the confidence that, he had in the year that he won his first two major titles. So I certainly wouldn't rule it out. When he's on it, there's not many players out there that can compete with him when he's at his best. So, I'm always hopeful going into TV events that he can go and, lift more titles for himself.
Well, from Frankfurt at the weekend to Milton Keynes during the week, you were there yesterday for the Players' Championships. We only get to see the stream boards follow the games on Dart Connect. Just how different are those Players' Championships compared to the stage events, going from that big crowd to a much quieter setting with no fans at those floor events?
Yeah, it's an ask. It's a big ask, but I think the sort of what I call like the bread and butter tournaments there, the behind the closed doors pro tours and things like that. They're so difficult now. You can sit down at the end of the day and you can have a fix through the results from the day, and when you've got players who are towards the bottom of the rankings and players who have just got their tour cards and things like that, and they can turn up to these events and average 100 plus at the drop of a hat. It's no problem to them now, and it's really difficult to sort of go there and to try and get yourself on a roll to win games of darts and win tournaments. It's an achievement now just to win one of them. So it was always going to be a big ask. It was a long few days in Germany, and then you have to sort of come down from that, and then all of a sudden, then you've just got to try and get yourself motivated and sort of livened up again for the 2 days in Milton Keynes. And I think it asked quite a bit of for Mike and Luke to go there and sort of play their best stuff. You can probably tell by the results, neither one of them got anywhere near to the levels that you'd expect them to. But it's just one of them, really. It's just about going there, picking up what ranking points you can, and then moving on to the next event after that.
Just one more, though, on the World Cup. 2 other players in Darting Promotions tasted success last week, Craig Galliano and Justin Hewitt, picking up a win for Team Gibraltar in the group stage against Spain. Always a tough opponent, Spain. How pleased were you, though, to see them pull out that win in the decider when the pressure was on?
Yeah, I was out of the mood for them, to be honest. Both lads had their parents or their dads out there with them, and when that winning double went in, to see the lads celebrate on stage like that, and then to turn round and both their dads have got tears in their eyes and things like that, it was it was a massive win for them, and it was a massive win for Gibraltar. But it's sort of the difficulty that we have with the players who we've got over there is obviously, like a lack of competitive darts. They'll come over and they'll play on the development tours, but those weekends are only, they're then phases during the year, so it's really difficult for them to get consistent form going. But, we're trying to do it so we can move on bit by bit with them. The lads work really hard when they're at home, and, they've now got to start looking at taking steps forward now, along with the rest of the development tour players we have.
Yeah, you mentioned about some plans you've got there for Craig and Justin. We'll throw Sean Negretti, another player from Gibraltar, in your stable in there as well. What are the main goals now for the rest of 2024 for them?
So the rest of this year for them now, Craig has actually flown back to England last night. He's actually playing in this week's Modus series as a late replacement, so that'll be a brilliant experience for him. I'm hoping then at some point as well towards the end of the year we may be able to get Justin over to take part in that as well. There'll be development tour titles to aim for as well. And then Sean is probably a little bit further back than the other 2 lads at the moment. He suffered with a shoulder injury a while ago, so it's taken him a while now to rediscover his form, but we're hopeful slowly but surely he'll get back there. And we've also got with us now Craig's cousin, Nico Bado, his name is. He's playing on the JDC Advanced Tour. And there's a 14-year-old kid there who, on a regular occasion now can average anything between 80 and 90 on the JDC Advanced Tour. And, I've been lucky enough to get down to Coventry for a couple of days to go and, watch him play and watch, some of the other players play there. And the standard now is just absolutely ridiculous. You've got young lads down there now from the age of 10, 11, 12 and, upwards, who are playing to such a high standard at the minute that they, if they were allowed to, they could step onto the development tour and, and put some decent runs together on there. That's how good it is now. So, yeah, it's great. Look, I really enjoy looking after the lads from over there. They have great support, and hopefully we can take the next step now and maybe look at Q School in the new year.
Well, you anticipated our next question. We were going to ask about Nico Bado, but since you already answered that, we'll continue. Obviously, is one of those players to look out for, as you mentioned, averaging at the age of 14 what I can only average over one leg if I'm playing at my best. But Back to your players on the PDC Tour. We've spoken, obviously, about Michael Smith. He's heading to Blackpool next week as one of the favorites in the event. But Luke Woodhouse heading there for the first time, a player making strides just outside the top 32, made a major quarterfinal last year. How pleased have you been with his progress? It's obviously a long time coming, keep getting better year on year.
Yeah, Luke's been fantastic. He's always been a player, and if you speak to Luke, he's a very honest lad, and he'll always be the first one to turn around and say, as a darter, natural ability wise, he's never been the highest in the pecking order of anybody on the tour. But what he does do is he does go away and he'll work and work and work on his game, and he's improved so much in the last sort of 12 to 18 months. I think reaching the final of the Pro Tour when he lost to Damon in the final. Yes, he never performed in the final that day, but up to that point he played really well, and that was his first what I call huge run on a Pro Tour event, and I think the confidence has just gone from there. And I think he's worked tirelessly on improving his mindset as well, which is as far as I'm concerned, that's one of the biggest elements of the game there, really. So, he's worked so hard. He reached the Grand Prix last year, had a fantastic result against Chizzy, and then performed really well in the next round as well. So I think that gave him the boost of confidence. The Worlds didn't work out for him as he liked, because he went there in really good form. But, then he had a slowish start to this year by the standards he wanted to be reaching. But slowly but surely, he's just got on a roll now. And, what he's doing there is he's combining his floor form with his stage form. So, Pro Tours onto European tours and then onto the TV events. And, he deserves his spot in Blackpool. And, I think he's drawed Nathan, and I think Nathan spoke today, about how well Luke's played, etc. So, yeah, Nathan will know he's got a tough job on his hands to get through the first round in Blackpool. But, Luke's just got to go there and enjoy the occasion. It'll be the first time he's ever played there, and it's such a spectacular place to play darts. So, I've just said to him, you've got to go there, you've got to enjoy yourself. If you play your game, you've got every chance of progressing, but it's going to be a really tough ask against a class act.
Definitely, yeah, and enjoy the darts, a good motto to live by. And one player that we have seen shine at Blackpool in the past, but he's not going to be there this year, is Callum Ridds. He slipped out of that top 32. There were some encouraging signs earlier this year with a semi-final on the floor, but where is Callum's game at right now?
I think Cal at the moment is just, it's just mindset really, rather than, we all know the ability that Callum's got. He's, you don't win tour titles and reach the quarterfinals of the match play in the Worlds, if you can't throw darts. There's been, he's had issues away from darts, etc., with losses in the family, etc., as well, and which have hit him hard. But look, he's got all the ability in the world, and it's just something which I know he's working really, he's working tirelessly on the other side of the game, on, getting the right mindset and, to be able to approach tournaments. And yes, he was desperate to qualify for the match play, but, I've spoke to him today, and, he's got a few weeks there where he can go away and carry on putting in the hard work on the practice board. And, that hopefully the next target will be to hopefully get into the Grand Prix. And then after that, then hopefully we can kick on from there.
Now, at the start of the year, we saw Jelle Clausen regain his tour card at Q-School after a few years off the tour. But I think it's fair to say we've not seen the best from him yet since returning to the tour. How would you assess Jelle's 2024 so far?
I think with Jelle, it was always going to be a case of let's get the first 6 to 9 months of the year out of the way, and hopefully he'll show signs of progression in that time, because it was always going to be a tough ask after playing on the WDF and things like that, which he won titles on there, he played very well, but there is still a big jump from playing WDF darts to then getting a tour card and getting back on the tour. we all know of Jenna's, injury problems that he's had in the past as well. So, he's had to change his throw slightly, he's had to change equipment, but I actually think, I don't think he's done too bad at all this year so far. He's now starting to show signs of, popping in a few decent averages in games and showing a little bit more consistency. Yes, he'll still, he'll still drop below the standard he expects to play at, but he's showing some good signs, and I think he's got to have the first, like I say, 6 to 9 months back on the tour to get his game back to a certain level. Hopefully, then he can have a strong end to the year, and then obviously then we can hopefully kick on next year.
And lastly, before we let you go, let's circle back to the match players. We've said you've got 2 players from Darting Promotions in the field. We're assuming you're going to be making the trip to Blackpool. So how much are you looking forward to getting back to the Winter Gardens and what is one of the most iconic venues Darts has to offer?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. The venue and the competition is probably my favourite one of the year, to be honest. I don't think it takes some beating. The crowd are fantastic up there. And you always get the quality of the games is always superb, to be fair. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And we've got 2 lads going there who are, just beginning to reach the top end of their games again now. So, yeah, I'm hopeful. We've got 2 really tough draws. We all know what Gary can do and what he's capable of producing. So that's going to be a tough game for Michael. But on the other hand, we all know the form that Michael's coming into now. So fingers crossed he can get through the first game. And as I said earlier on, Luke's just got to go there. He's got to enjoy the experience. Do I think he's got the game to beat Nathan 100%? I think Luke's got the game to go a long way in the competition, overall. But it's always a big ask going there and walking into a brilliant venue like that, and sampling the atmosphere and everything else, and sort of then managing to compose yourself to go on that stage. So it'll be a big ask, and to play last year's winner, who, I think we all know that Nathan's been struggling a little bit recently with an injury problem and things like that. But, even Nathan carrying an injury, he's still such a formidable opponent. You're still talking about a lad who's, banging in 100+ averages for fun. So, yeah, look, it's going to be a big ask, but we go there with confidence, and we'll go there to take part and see how we do.
Well, Mark, as always, thank you so much for your time, and best of luck to both Luke and Michael and Blackpool and the entire stable for the rest of the year.
Brilliant. Thanks, lads. Enjoyed it. Thanks very much.
Thanks again to Mark for joining us now, finishing up the show with our predictions. And we're going to get to our picks for who we think is going to be lifting the Phil Taylor Trophy a week on Sunday. We're also going to be joined by Jack from Quiff in a moment to run through some of the odds from Quiff for the World Matchplay. But before we do that, let's start off with our weekly Dartscast Parlay for the World Matchplay. We debuted this ahead of the World Cup of Darts whilst you were away, Burton, and essentially how it works is on our preview shows for the big TV events, me and you and Jack, we're each going to make 2 picks from the first round matchups, and we're going to put them together to make up our own ACCA. And over the year, we're going to keep a tally and see who is the best tipster on the show. Matthew Kiernan, he filled in for you whilst you were away, and he had some bold picks, it's got to be said. They didn't quite come off, so he went 0 for 2. Me and Jack, a bit more safer with ours. We both went 2-0, but let's see if we can have a clean sweep this time round for the match play. As you've got some catching up to do, Burton, we are going to let you have first pick on the board. So looking at the draw for the first round games, give us 2 names you're picking to win their first round games in Blackpool.
Yeah, I think Matt is still mad at me for never paying for the petrol when he drove me to Minehead, was it 5 years ago, and he got his revenge with those tips for the World Cup. But I'm confident that I'll still come back and win despite that head start I gave you guys. I'll start with what I think is the most obvious pick, and that's Luke Humphries over Ricardo Pacheco. I mean, I probably just jinxed it, and Ricardo is going to win 10 legs to 2. But so far, I have a good history in tipping in things involving Pikachu. I did tip him to win his tour card a few years ago. I don't think anyone else, other than maybe himself, had him on their list entering Q-School that year. So I've had good luck in tips involving him. But unfortunately, in his case, I'm not going him to win this match. The world number one is going to win that one fairly comfortably. And for my other one, got to go on current form. I'm going to go Chris Dobie over Richie Edhouse. I do have a feeling Edhouse is going to start playing well again at some point. I don't think he's just going to fall back to the player he was. But I don't think it's going to be here. And even if he does average 100, I think that might not be enough to beat Chris Dobie. It's a tough draw. I'm going Chris Dobie alongside Luke Humphries.
My two picks, I'm going to go based on what I said earlier. We were talking about the debutants in this year's match play. You've gone with two of the debutants to lose there for your picks, so I'm going to back them up a little bit here. I'm going to go with Luke Woodhouse, and I feel like I've got to double down on it now, because if it's wrong, then I've only made one wrong prediction and not two if I'd have gone with something else here. So Luke Woodhouse for me, I said it earlier, I think he is going to get past Nathan Aspinall on the opening night. Second pick, it might be a precursor to my overall picks in a moment, but I'm going to go with Gary Anderson to beat Michael Smith in the first round, the number 3 seed on that Monday night. I'm not sure what the odds are, but who's the favourite for that one, but I'd imagine it's going to be very close between the two. So my two picks, Luke Woodhouse and Gary Anderson. Let's bring in Jack to get his picks and also the best odds from Quiff ahead of the World Matchplay. I'm pleased to say we're joined once again by the head of sponsorship at Quiff, Jack Milner. Thanks for the time again, Jack. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thanks, pal. Like I said, just back for a few days. Actually met the lads from the WDF at the weekend. Looking forward to the lakeside, and I love this week. Blackpool was always kind of I don't say a bit of Marmite to some people. I loved it. I worked in sponsorship for BetVigs for 3 years, so I was trying to think, 15, 16, 17. One, I think 2 for Michael and 1 for Phil. Phil, when he came back from the brink and he battered Michael in the quarterfinals on the Friday, is still one of the best atmospheres I've seen in Blackpool at the match play or in darts in general. That was the winning guys was rocking that night, and judging by some of the round ones, some of the games we've got coming up this week, I could see a similar type of mood. I think we mentioned off air Monday night could be pretty tasty at the Winter Gardens.
Yeah, that's going to be a big session. Van Gerwen against Littler, Smith against Anderson. Let's just start off, though, with the outrights for the match play. We know that Luke Humphries is going to be the favourite as the world number one, but give us any of the outrights that are taking your fancy and any of the other markets you think are going to be of particular interest ahead of the tournament.
Yeah, we'll stick with the I'll keep it simple and stick with the outright. I think I don't want to complicate it with the quarters betting. I mean, a bit like myself, I kind of get lost with that type of stuff. But Luke Humphries is a 3.15, basically 9-4 market leader, world number one, world champion, won the World Cup with Michael Smith, a week on Saturday out in Germany. He is the man to beat. He still probably isn't getting his just desserts as the main man of the sport. Someone like a Phil Taylor, or even like you think of Michael's domination between 2015 to 2020. He still doesn't have that aura yet. Luke Littler, we probably have to keep short just because of how popular he is amongst punters. He's probably too short, in my opinion, to back at his current price. He's 3.85. He disappointed on the Pro Tour last week. Was it Nathan Horrell? I think he got beat by. No disrespect to him last week, and you think his averages weren't great. I'd probably try to avoid him. Likewise, Gessie's next at 6.1. Michael Van Gerwen, brilliant record in Blackpool. Poor this year, 7.3. You've got Rob Cross, Michael Smith, Gary Anderson. The pair will face each other on Monday night, as you alluded to. I think you can probably look for a bit of value here. Nathan Aspinall was a big prize when he won 12 months ago. He's around the 20-1 mark, but I wouldn't put you off something like I'm slightly biased. I think Stephen Bunting at 20-1 is a cracking price. He loves playing there. He's kind of had a bit of a renaissance the last 12 months, and for me, someone like, and this will go into our first round picks, right? Bunting, again, I do a weekly column with Chizzy for Quiff. He's been looking to Blackpool all 3 years. As soon as the Worlds are out the way, I am going to try and get myself, and it's difficult to try to get yourself in peak order for certain tournaments, but he has been looking to peak for Blackpool time. He can go into his bed every night. He won't be travelling on the road. If the games are moved forward on Sunday for the Euros final, should England beat Holland midweek, that will suit him even better. He doesn't like dawdling around, but he won on the Euro Tour 2 weeks ago. He consistently fires 10 plus averages, given the format, he's so hard to break because due to his heavy scoring. I think Chizzy at around 25-1. I think he could just surprise a few people this week in Blackpool.
Well, you teased your picks there. Let's get on to the Weekly Dartscast Parlay. Burton, he's looking to get off the mark. He's gone with Luke Humphries to beat Ricardo Pietrexco and Chris Dobie to beat Richie Edhouse. I've gone with Luke Woodhouse to beat Nathan Aspinall and Gary Anderson to beat Michael Smith. But what are your two picks, Jack, for the first round, and what are the all-important odds that gives us for our six-fold ACCA?
Yeah, I think the six-fold pays around the 20-1 mark. So I think Luke Woodhouse would that be something of an upset? I don't know. You're against the defending champion, arguably. Chizzy's 1.46 against Krzysztof Ratajkowski, and the other two, Stephen Bunting 1.44. But yeah, the average, the ACCA overall pays 20-1. It's difficult to try and find again any real big upsets because you probably wouldn't argue as upsets. Someone like Barney's 11-10 against Johnny Clayton. If Barney beat Johnny Clayton on the Blackpool stage, would that be an upset? Potentially. Likewise, I think Daryl Gurney 2.85 against Gezi. Gezi's had an in and out, missed the World Cup, and then he kind of lamented the fact that the World Cup was handed to England 2 weeks ago, despite the fact, he missed out last minute. You wouldn't be surprised. Gurney famous to beat Gary Anderson to kind of launch his career, didn't he, on, I think, 2015-16 there, because I remember filming his manager, Matt, going bananas in the... I was going to say owners and trainers in the managed friends and family bit in the corner. So it's a tricky one because there's nothing real stands out. I think it's going to be good darts. Danny Noppert, I think, should beat James Wade. He's another one. He was on the short list, but and Andrew Gilding. The more I'm talking about this, we're going to have a few more in. Andrew Gilding against Peter Wright 205. Again, he's odds against. He's the underdog. You won't be surprised if he got through to the last 16. So yeah, it should be cracking. Week 10 days of darts, and fingers crossed we found a few winners for you. But yeah, Chizzy for me and Bunting to at least fly the flag for the Lancastrians, but should be a cracking 10 days of sport, and I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah,
it should be good. The match play always a special event, and if you are having a bet on the darts, you can supercharge your odds with Quiff. Please remember it is 18 plus. T's and C's apply. Please gamble responsibly. BeGambleAware.org. And Jack, thanks as always for the time. Hope you enjoy the darts as well, and we look forward to having you back on the show again soon.
My pleasure. I look forward to your signs out in the stands on Monday. Enjoy.
Thanks. And there you go. You hear Jack's picks, and I'm sure we'll tweet what the odds are on our six-way ACCA overall with all of our picks. But one more question. It's our final prediction. Who will be lifting the Phil Taylor Trophy next week?
Well, here we go then. Right, I'm going to be brave. I'm going to give you my 4 semi-finalists. Top half, I'm going Luke Humphries, and I know you were really fancying Ross Smith when we spoke last week to go on a run, and I do like that tip, but I just think that first round tie with Josh Rock, that's such a hard game to call. So from that second quarter, I'm looking elsewhere. I'm steering clear of that game, and I'm going to go slightly left field with this one. I'm going to go with someone that's made the semi-finals before, but probably not fancied to do it this year. I'm going to go with Danny Noppert as my second semi-finalist. I do think he's run ends to Luke Humphries in the semi-finals, but I think Noppert, due another deep run on TV. He's not had a lot of them on TV in the last 18 months, but he has been fairly consistent away from the TV cameras. 4 quarterfinals and a semi-final on the Euro Tour this year. He's also won a title on the floor. Well, who hasn't won a title on the floor? They're going to everyone at the minute so far this year. But bottom half, as much as I want to avoid that Van Gerwen Littler game, I do think the winner of that quarter comes from that game. I'm going to go with Luke Littler, but I'm not entirely confident with that one. I know he's had so many impressive debuts in different events. He is due, I think, an early exit in one of them in the match play. We've seen it before, how players coming in hot can get found out on that first time on that stage. But I'm going to stick with Littler in that bottom quarter. This is a tough one. I teased it earlier, but I'm going to stick with it. Gary Anderson to come through that section and play Luke Littler, and what a semi-final that be. Will it be another Littler Humphries major final? One of our guests last year, he was predicting a Gary Anderson masterclass at the match play last year. It didn't happen, but it is going to happen this year. I'm going Anderson to beat Littler in the semis, and then he's going to beat Humphries the following night to become a 2-time World Matchplay champion. And all of a sudden, the PDC, they're going to have a big dilemma on their hands in trying to persuade Gary to play in the Premier League again next year. What a problem to have, and it's going to happen if my predictions come true.
It's not going to happen, so there's nothing we have to worry about there. But this is tough. I am going to go Luke Humphries to make the semifinal. I have a sneaky suspicion that Raymond van Barneveld might have a run in him here if he gets past Johnny Clayton. But I just think Humphries is going to find his game and get through this. It's a tough second round there against either Stephen Bunting or Ryan Joyce. I could see whoever gets through that match giving Luke Humphries hell in the second round. But I think Humphries will make the semifinals. You already touched on who I'm picking out of the second quarter. I like this draw for Ross Smith. I mean, he could lose to Josh Rock first match. That's absolutely possible. But I think he's going to come out of that match tested, and I think he'll beat either Price or Gurney. I think he'll beat whoever he plays in the quarterfinal. So I'm going Ross Smith to take on Luke Humphries in the semifinal. Bottom half of the draw, I think MVG is going to beat Littler, and I think MVG is then going to lose his next match, whether it's to Cullen or Dolan. I don't need to pick, because neither of them are going to the semifinals. It's going to be Dave Chisnell off his Euro Tour title, getting out of that quarter. And then in the bottom part of the draw, this is such a tough one. You can make a case for a lot of them down here. I'll go Rob Cross. I like the Gary Anderson pick. I think Gary Anderson is live. I think he is going to bring his floor game and his Euro Tour game to the television stage at some point this year, and maybe it will be in Blackpool. But this is such a tough draw. He could bring it and still lose to Michael Smith. He could still lose to Chris Dovey. He could still lose to any of these players, even averaging 103. I think that will happen. I'm going Rob Cross to make the semifinals. And then the final, from the bottom half, I'm going to go Chizzy to beat Rob Cross to make the final here. So I'm going Dave Chisnell getting through to the World Matchplay final for the first time. He's never been past the quarterfinal. He's been to almost every final in the world. He's lost them all, but he's not done it here. This is Chizzy's year to make the final, where he'll go against the world number one. No siree. Ross Smith is going to beat Luke Humphries to make the final, and then Ross Smith is going to be the World Matchplay champion. 18 legs to 12 over Dave Chisnell. Write it down. Smudger is a two-time major champ. He's not a one-hit wonder anymore. He is a World Matchplay winner by the time that this tournament is finished. Anything else for this week?
Well, first of all, I don't think I could cope with another Dave Chisnell major loss, so hopefully that part of it doesn't happen. But as always, got to say thank you to our guests for joining us, to Dan and Mark for their time. Thank you to our sponsors for their continued support, to Darts Corner, Condor Darts and Quiff for all your darting needs. If you need a new set of darts, a new dartboard, Darts Corner's got you covered. Links in the description. And remember, if you fancy a flutter on the match play this week, Quiff is the place to go. The app available on iOS and Android, or the Quiff website. Again, links in the description. And remember, 18 plus, T's and C's apply. Please gamble responsibly and begambleaware.org. And lastly, thank you to everyone for listening. Plenty of content going to be coming from us during the match play. We've got a brand new episode in our Darts Legend series with the first ever World Matchplay champion, Larry Butler, the 30-year anniversary of his title win in 1994. We're excited to bring you that one. We'll also have our producer Hannah in Blackpool for the Women's World Matchplay next week, so hopefully we'll get some interviews with the players in the lead up to that event for you to have a listen to. And until then, as Burton would say, hang tight until you can enjoy the darts, and hang tight a little longer until Monday to see if you can spot me in the crowd at the Winter Gardens. Just keep an eye out for the Richie Edhouse replica shirt sleeve and the goatee.
Can we enjoy the darts though while we're hanging tight to see you Monday night?
Yes, yeah, we'll allow that.
Okay, good. Well, I'll hang tight for that. I'll hang tight for many things, but I'll also do as you say, and I'll enjoy the darts. This is one of the best tournaments of the year. It's, I think, my favorite, just because it's, from the oppressive heat, especially here in the U.S., a break, an excuse to sit inside in the air conditioning and watch some darts. I'm not going to complain about that, especially if this tournament is, like Dan Dawson, you heard him say earlier, going to be throwing up some fantastic matches. Hopefully we'll come back with a mid-tournament show at some point. We'll see. The logistics of that is always a little tricky, but maybe we can record something after the first round or sometime in there. If not, we'll be back after Ross Smith wins the title. Until then, just enjoy the darts.